Just to give a little recap in terms of Ecuador. I mean, obviously Ecuador has been one of the harder hit countries in South America with coronavirus infections. A lot of that happened traced from one or a couple people that came back from Spain to Guayaquil and attended large events, and it spread quite rapidly. You know, considering the numbers, though, it's extremely small compared to, say, anywhere in the States or in Brazil or anywhere else. Majority of the cases have been down on the coast around Guayaquil, the large coastal city. Quito's only had maybe, I don't know, they say around 1,700 confirmed cases in the whole city of Quito. We're talking about a city of 3.3 million. I can say, though, for the businesses in Ecuador, I mean, this is an extremely difficult country, like Panama, in terms of dealing with the crisis and the fact that Ecuador is a dollarized country, so they rely on the US dollar as their principal currency. So you can imagine if they're not in a situation like we are in the United States, where they can just print whatever money they want to send out stimulus checks to residents and to businesses. So there hasn't been a lot of social or business help here. Additionally, their labor laws are very strict in terms of not being able to lay off or fire employees. If they do, they're generally having to pay 6 months full salary and benefits. So it's put these companies in very difficult situations. You know, we don't have a date yet in terms of opening. I mean, obviously, I think that mainland Ecuador international travel and borders is going to open before the Galapagos does, just because you have an added layer of complexity in the Galapagos. But we're in the waiting game, like everywhere else. And as I was talking with someone yesterday, you know, we're hearing now in the news, oh, Latin America cases are rising. But if you look at this in kind of a timeline thing of in Asia and then China and then in Europe and then in North America, obviously the Americas were the last to really be affected by it. So now we're seeing, you know, what's happened to other countries pass by. I take some security in the fact that, you know, Latin America, because they're behind everybody else, are getting to see trends happening in other nations and how they're responding to it. And they're going to be seeing other countries reopening back up and seeing what works and what doesn't open up. So I hope that if other places have to shut down again, you know, Latin America is not going to be in a situation having to open up and then shut down again, because they're going to be seeing what's happening around the world and acting accordingly. So with that little intro, now we're up to 86 people. So I think I'm going to get started. Again, use the chat feature to communicate with me rather than questions and answer during this. Today, we're talking about two of my properties in Ecuador, Quito and in Mashpi and Casa Gangotena. These are sister properties. And you have done previous ones with me with Galapagos Safari Camp and Hacienda Zuleta, so I'm going to talk a little bit how to weave those in together into an itinerary here. So I'm going to start off in Quito, just because that's a landing spot for most people coming into Ecuador. Just a little overview of Quito itself. So, you know, this is the capital of Ecuador, even though the larger city, Guayaquil, is on the coast as a large port city, but Quito is the traditional colonial capital. It's a city of about 3.3 million people. The elevation of Quito is around 9,350 feet. So very much same elevation as, say, Hacienda Zuleta, as I talked about before. It's not like one is higher than the other when you're going into them. This is the world's, it's kind of cool. It's the world's capital closest to the equator itself. This little circle that popped up is where the airport is. So this is a new airport that opened, I don't know, what, 7 years ago or so. The old airport used to be right in the middle of the city, which is convenient, but it was never going to be able to grow. So they built this large airport outside of the city. So as you land here, most flights coming from North America are arriving early in the morning, or they're arriving late at night. And then to get into where Casa Gangotena is, it's about an hour drive. And there's multiple ways you can do it depending upon traffic. But this is like a general location of where Casa Gangotena is, which is in the heart of historic Quito. Quito, as a city of 3.3 million, it's interesting. It's in this long Andean valley. And what I want to point out is that a lot of the hotel experiences here in Quito, Quito's kind of divided up into two parts. You have the newer part in the northern part of the city, New Quito, and that's where the majority of like hotel development happens. So that's where you're going to find all the global chains of your Hiltons, your Marriotts, your Swiss Hotel, places like that are in the new town. And again, you're going to find all these global chains of fast food restaurants and malls and stuff like that in the new part of town. So a lot of people are used to that. However, where Casa Gangotena sits is in the old historic part of town. And this is an area that was neglected for a very long time, but the Ecuadorian government in the last 15 years or so has really done a great job of cleaning up Old Town, you know, because of the amount of tourism coming to Ecuador. And, you know, this is where people want to be, to see this colonial splendor and the history of the city. So they've cleaned it up a tremendous amount. And then there's been all these hotels that have popped up as well. Casa Gangotena itself is right in the middle of this historic area. This is the little shell, their logo, where you can see. I'm going to show you where it is, right on the Plaza San Francisco, but this is right next to the main Plaza de Armas. Kind of all the historical things that you want to see in the beautiful streets to roam in the historical downtown Quito are all walkable from Casa Gangotena itself. So Casa Gangotena actually sits on undoubtedly the liveliest kind of square in old historic part of Quito. This is Plaza San Francisco, looking at pretty much from the doorway of Casa Gangotena, looking out on this plaza. And even though a couple blocks away, you have the Plaza Mayor, where the presidential palaces and a lot of the government function buildings, this is really has always been kind of the heart of Quito. Dating back to Incan times, this was the original Incan Plaza, where there was a lot of temples and palaces around this up until the 15th century. And then during kind of colonial times, it became a big marketplace. And so it was really popular for the prominent, Spanish families, the aristocratic families, to build their mansions around this plaza, because it was the heart. So it was very much a part of prestige being there. This is Casa Gangotena itself. And this is it in relation to the San Francisco Iglesia, the San Francisco Church. This building was owned by many, was the home of quite a few Republican presidents of Ecuador. And then it was burnt down in 1914. And then this family called the Gangotena family, that's where the name came from. The Gangotena family rebuilt this in 1924 and held on to it until around the early 2000s when it was sold to Roque Sevilla, who's the chairman of Metropolitan Touring. So incredible history of this home. So I mean, looking at that, that was a private home for the Gangotena family and for many prominent families of Quito over the years. And so as you come in here, basically when Roque bought this building was abandoned. It was in awful shape, and they brought in historians to bring back the details of it. So as you come in, this is kind of the lounge and lobby area. So they've held on to a lot of like the Art Nouveau and Deco elements from the original mansion of Gangotena there. So like, the painted ceilings that you see there, wooden paneling, beautiful mirrors, stuff like that, and a lot of frescoes and stuff on the walls. It retains all of this history and charm of its heyday back in the 20s or so. So it really has that feel of like old Quito in the 1920s, and there you are right in the middle of historic downtown Quito. This is kind of the solarium in the back, where they'll do afternoon tea sessions for guests as well. So just a really lovely, serene setting right in the middle of Old Town Quito. It's beautiful. Everything's marble. So it's beautiful spiral marble staircase that goes up. And of course, there's an elevator as well. But just showing you some of the details of the interior, the painstaking restoration they did to hold on to the history of this building. Favorite place for a lot of guests is the rooftop terrace here. So on the top floor of the hotel, the rooms are split over three floors. And at the top, we have available for guests this outdoor patio where you're looking out over Plaza San Francisco and looking behind you up to Pancillo Hill. So this is a lovely place during the day. You go up here early in the morning, kind of watch life start in the city. And then you have beautiful views at nighttime as well. So they do cocktails out there on that patio at nighttime as well. So this is a real gathering spot for people to be able to come up and just soak up the views over the Valley of Quito. And as Hope Smith said, is beautiful hotels, of course, because the amount of roses and stuff that are grown in Ecuador for export, constantly decorating the hotel. A lovely little bar area downstairs as well. My favorite spot, of course, if you know me well. And then they have a wonderful restaurant here called Cedron, which is also open to the public. And this is where, breakfast is included in rates. People can choose to have dinner here, but the whole point is that you're based right here in downtown Quito, and you have all of historic downtown Quito to explore. So there's wonderful restaurants and museums and cathedrals and everything to go out and explore while you're there. But you have the option of this and fantastic fine dining experience at the hotel as well. A little bit about the rooms. I'm not going to go into all the 6 categories, because the interesting thing about this hotel is that, because it's an old historic mansion, there's no room that's exactly the same. Some have similar decorations, but these rooms were original rooms of the old mansion, so they've been converted into guest rooms. So we have 31 rooms in total that are spread over 6 categories, and there's subcategories within the category. So again, just too much to go into one thing, but I just want to show you some of the rooms. Like this room is a beautiful room. I mean, looking at this oil painting around the top of that, and then the old hammered tin ceilings as well, which were, an architectural detail of the time. This is one example of one of the rooms. And then here's another one that's a completely different color palette. And you can see out the windows of these rooms, they have different views over Old Town Quito. Here's one of the rooms. This is actually a cool room. This was the women's sewing room. So back in the day, this is where the Gangotena sisters and, the women would get together and sew. And it has these, I don't know where this is from, somewhere in Italy or so, this watercolor on the wall. Incredible marble bathrooms on this. And again, just looking at the architectural details of these rooms, the columns and some of them. And then obviously the top tier rooms as well are the ones that have plaza views. So we have quite a few rooms that are on the front of the building where you have these views of night and day looking out over the plaza. So, you know, all of that information I'm gonna send you afterwards about room categories and the pricing accordingly to it, but just suffice to say that, you know, no matter what room category, the rooms are all gonna be very different in the hotel. It's just the character of the property overall. You know, I'm not one just to, I don't represent many city hotels, and I don't do many hotels that are just luxury hotels for luxury hotel's sake. I love the fact that Casa Gangotena has really done this thing of, with their concierge and with their hosts there and the general managers, they do daily activities that are included in the rate. So guests can, you know, they're basically left a card, or they're told, you know, this afternoon we're doing an hour walk around town to go see some artisans, or we're going to be doing a rum and chocolate tasting, etc. And guests can just sign up at the front desk so they want to do that activity. So these are free, complimentary included. And that's the feeling I always get from this hotel, is that, you know, here you are right in the center of historic Quito, and like the front door staff, the bellman and the concierge, they have a connection with everybody. So, you know, guests often say, hey, I'm looking to buy this particular thing. Here, I'll take you. And they'll walk them through town to go find what they need, take them to a specific vendor or artisan. So it has this great like connection with the goings on of the city. So it is the concierge and the managers on duty that will do a lot of these activities for the guests. One of the most popular is they do a wonderful chocolate and rum tasting with guests in the evening, and that takes place in the solarium. So they'll try the different types of chocolates around Ecuador, hot chocolate, which is kind of chocolate and cheese, which is a very Quito tradition. Sit there and have hot chocolate and bits of cheese with it. Interesting combination. It's actually delicious. So they do chocolate and rum tastings for guests. And then they have a couple of these like special insider tours that they've worked out with some of the visitor sites around them. One of them just right there in the San Francisco church across there, you can climb up and get up into the choir seating area, which is above the main church. And I mean, they've been having daily services going on here for hundreds of years. So you actually get up into the choir area, looking down onto the church service. I mean, this is an amazing thing. I'm not a big church goer, but I've always loved going up here and just listening to the sounds and listening to the sermons going on in these church and just checking out the ornate details of the church. They have access to take guests up into the bell towers of the San Francisco church, which is really cool just to get up there into that bell tower, looking out over all the city. And of course, they remind you like 150 times not to ring the bells while you're up there. It's really tempting. They're all just hanging there with ropes. You're not allowed to do that, but it's a great little insider access that they have there. Also in San Francisco, this was, you know, for the monks there, which are actually Trappist monks, there's a whole brewery there in San Francisco behind as well in the cloister. And so they worked with some of the monks there to take them and do a tour of the original brewing. And actually Quito itself has become a place where there's tons of great microbreweries around the capital. So kind of seeing where the whole microbrew thing started in Quito is quite cool. And then you have down the street, you have the Carmen Alto Cloister, a nunnery, which is actually still functioning. So there are, you know, nuns living in there in silence. And so they have a great kind of after it's open to the public, they can go in after hours and do private tours of the Carmen Alto Cloister with guests. So, you know, just additional details. So that's why this is such a great hotel, is right in the heart of historic Quito. If you're going to stay in Quito, I mean, going and staying in Newtown, you could be anywhere in the world. You know, you're going to find a Papa John's pizza, Kentucky Fried Chicken on corners and shopping malls, whereas here you're really getting the history and the feel of Quito itself by staying here, and these free excursions that are included in the hotel. And I don't think there's any other hotel that's as grand and beautiful and really fits the kind of feeling of its location in Casa Gangotena. So we're going to move on to Mashpi now. Mashpi itself, again, this is a sister property. This is out in the Cloudforest, or the Choco Biosphere. So getting there, you actually leave from Quito. It's about a 3.5-hour drive, and you're actually driving west. You're driving towards the Pacific rather than towards the Amazon getting out there. So it's about a 3.5-hour drive. Included in the rates with Mashpi Lodge, they do have a shared daily transfer that goes out there, and that shared transfer service will pick up at some of the hotels in the new part, and then the last pickup is actually at Casa Gangotena. So it's kind of a preference that if you're staying in Gangotena, you're not having to leave as early as other people that are getting picked up in the other part of town. And so the transfer actually leaves finally from Quito, exactly from the front of Casa Gangotena. You can do, you know, arrange private transfers as well if you just want a more comfortable vehicle and private. I assume that, you know, post-COVID, that's going to be the preference of most people, is having private transfers going out there. So the journey out there to Mashpi, it's quite an adventure. You're actually not, I think you're only going something like 30 miles in a straight line, but it takes 3.5 hours because it's curvy, driving up over the Andes and then dropping down towards the coast into this Mashpi Reserve. It's an incredible drive. I want to kind of set the scene for why Mashpi Reserve is so unique in terms of an ecosystem. So looking at this northern part of South America, some of the major biomes that you have the Atacama Desert, one of the driest deserts in the world, which stretches, from Ecuador, Peru into northern Chile and Argentina and Bolivia. You have the Andean mountain range going up the coast. You have the huge Amazon basin as well. But then you have this other biome, which most people don't know of, which is the Choco. Okay, so the Choco, why it's unique is that the Atacama is very dry because of the cold current coming up, the Humboldt current. But having Ecuador right on the equator, this is a convergence of two major ocean currents. So that uniqueness, and then being on the western slopes of the Andes, is really nowhere else in the world like this in terms of a biosphere being affected by these ocean currents and elevations and rain and the species that exist across, the Andes, the Amazon, and the Atacama. And so it all kind of converges in the Choco. The thing is that the Choco has been decimated quite a bit. There's only about 8% of it left. It used to extend into Panama through Colombia and into Ecuador, but only about 8% of the original Choco biosphere exists, and the majority of that old growth is actually the Mashpi Reserve. So as you drive from Quito down to Mashpi, you're going up and over the Andes, and you're dropping down into these different biomes, which is really cool. So going up and over through the elfin forest, dropping down into the Cloudforest, and then you're what makes Mashpi unique, if you see there on the elevation thing, where you'll see that there's the rainforest down here, the Cloudforest and elfin forest. The Mashpi Reserve basically goes between the Cloudforest and the rainforest. So it has rainforest in its area, and it's also in the Cloudforest. So dropping just a few hundred meters when you're in the Mashpi Reserve across it, you have completely different species in the area. So that's why it makes such a unique thing. So this is not the Amazon rainforest. A lot of people look at the pictures of this and like, oh, it's the Amazon. This is not. The Amazon's to the east of the Andes, down, the Amazon basin. This is on the western slope of the Andes. Let me just see, someone who's using. Chelsea was asking for people with kids that get car sick, would the drive to Mashpi too curvy for them? Yeah, probably. I've taken my family. My wife is super prone to car sickness. One of my kids is as well. It's a pretty curvy road. I think that in that case, I think doing a private transfer is great, just because you're in a smaller, more comfortable vehicle. You can stop when you want, whereas the shared excursion, it's not as easy to just say, let's stop, I'm not feeling well. You take your time. It's a journey to get out there. Any place that's amazing to experience is a little bit of a journey. So definitely, motion sickness is the thing. We have had people that have helicoptered out to a nearby town called Pacto, the closest place that you can land. Even from there, it's about another hour drive down there. So looking at Mashpi now, where it sits, so here's where it sits, and we're kind of looking towards the coastline as well. Really interesting stories. I talked about the Choco, and as it was being cut down. So this area actually, where you see the hotel built on this ridge, I mean, just getting there, people drive, the last bit is hour on this Jurassic Park dirt road to get down to the property, and people are like, this is unbelievable. Like, they can't expect they're going to find a luxury hotel at the end of this drive. I mean, just the road in there is phenomenal, but the backstory of it was this was actually actively being milled, or it was being cut down, a forestry project. And then the mill suffered financial problems and went up for sale basically in an auction. It was bought by Roque Sevilla, who's ex-mayor of Quito, big economist and philanthropist and ecologist. So he saw that this lumber mill was suffering and managed to buy it. And he managed to buy a 3,300 acre parcel of prime Choco Biosphere. And out of that 3,300 acres, something like 85% of it was old growth that had never been cut down. So this is like the most virgin extreme tract of Choco that existed on the planet that he managed to then buy, and then in turn build the lodge as a way to feed, the money back from tourism into this reserve and to be able to do ecological research as well. So it's an incredible location. And actually where the hotel was built was on the site of where the old mill was actually built, so if you would have had to done this and build a road in and excavate that site, it would have been a whole nother project. But its setting is amazing. You see the sun there kind of setting over the Pacific. So really, really unique ecosystem, which we're going to dive into. And this is the hotel. And like I said, when people drive in here, that drive out is just incredible. And then people get to this hotel and they're like, whoa, the modern architecture, the glass and steel, the angles, the wood. It's just an incredible architectural thing to find in the middle of this Jurassic Park forest. And here's just some shots of the exterior of it looking in. And so of course the idea is just as much glass as possible, so people are inside, air conditioned, protected, but you always have this connection looking out to this Choco Biosphere that you've come to see, and just a few more shots of the interior. These are the different rooms on the different levels of it. And this is the main dining area and bar of it, looking down from the second level or the entry level, looking down onto the dining room. And then there's huge patios outside if people want to sit outside and watch the clouds swirl. They do morning bird watching here really early, like 6 or 6:30. That was actually my kids' favorite thing because they said, we do bird watching and we serve warm chocolate chip cookies at 6:30. So my kids were like, it's the only day they were up and out at 6:30 because they were coming for the cookies, and near the end of it, they were actually getting in bird watching, which was great. So again, just a couple shots of the dining room, incredible elevated food here as well. So much of it kind of locally sourced from all the variety of wonderful food items that they have throughout Ecuador to showcase here. Bar guys are fantastic. Spent many late nights hanging out with these guys, trying different concoctions that they create with all these like tropical fruits and stuff. So talking a bit about the lodging there. So this Mashpi lodge overall has 23 rooms total. You know, the rooms are kind of kept simplistic because they don't want to take away from nature that you're coming to see outside. So it's kind of clean lines and all focused towards looking out the windows. But these are broken up. We've got most of them are Waira rooms, which is the traditional room there at the lodge. We've got twin rooms and we have king rooms. And then we have three suites as well, and then one Wawa room, which is like a, you know, young kid friendly room. Out of the twin rooms, we actually do have connecting rooms where you can connect a king and a twin, or you can connect two twins. So if you do have families, we do have actually, you know, interconnecting pass-through doors there for families that are coming to stay, because this is a great place to go for families. So just taking a look at some of the rooms, this is the Waira room. And again, as you can see, they're, you know, long, simplistic, and it's all like sucking you towards that view. It's great when you're on the second and third levels because you're up in the treetop level looking out and you're having birds flying by your window. And, you know, it's the weather here is constantly changing. A lot of clouds, a lot of bright sun, rain, sun, bright cloud, mist. It's just really cool. It's always changing. So it's just like much better than TV, sitting there and watching nature unfold outside. Another shot of another Waira twin, and then just seeing, you know, same type of room, but king bedded as well. And then the suites. I think it was a suite. They have, you know, a completely kind of separate large bathroom with these massive tubs, which I showed you in the first picture, but they're on the corners of the building. So you have views out of both sides. So it's like this wraparound fishbowl looking out. So that's what you're paying for, is that extra space and the incredible extra view looking out from the Yaku suites as well. In the building also, there is a spa and massage room as well. They've just built a little walk away from the thing. We do have a hot tub pavilion and a yoga deck, and this is generally clients will sign up for this so they can get to use it privately. So they'll get an hour or so and they can just go down and soak in the hot tub and do yoga there on the yoga pavilion. You can see it's all open air. So that was just a little bit of the amenities of the property. This is also kind of the lounge. I'll show you another picture where this is blown out. It's a huge room, but this is where we do most of the briefings for all the excursions, which is the highlight of what people are coming here, is to get out and do the excursion. So Mashpi, I mean, their guides, their naturalist guides are incredible. I'm always in awe of these guys just because personally, I'm not as much of a naturalist. I'm more into like culture and history, but seeing these guys, how passionate they are about the flora and fauna there, is just incredible. And one thing that I think that Mashpi does really, really well with their naturalist guides is that when you go out on these excursions, they have two types of naturalist guides. They have local guides who are local guides. I can't remember this guy's name on the left, but he is phenomenal. He's from the nearest local town. So he basically has grown up his entire life in this area. Actually, Isabel, if you remind me of his name. So they kind of have native guides, and then they have university trained biologists. So when you're going out on these excursions, you're kind of learning about this area from two levels. You're learning about it from like a local natural level, from people that have grown up in the area with their personal thing, and they're the ones to be able to talk about the you know, medicinal plants of the area, things that they used to gather and eat there. They have more of an intimate personal knowledge of it. And then you're talking with these university trained botanists. So they really complement each other well. And you get this depth of knowledge from two different perspectives around these excursions. But it is fun guys as well to go out with. What's great about the excursions here is that when you're at Mashpi, unlike a lot of other hotels throughout South America where excursions are included, where you have to drive to get to trailheads and things, here at Mashpi, pretty much everything leaves straight from the lodge. So most of it you leave right from the property walking. There are a few things where they do a short drive in vans up to maybe the, you know, Hummingbird Garden or so, but you're based here at this lodge and it's strategically located, but all the excursions are out from there. So this is a little map, maybe hard to understand, but you've got, you know, the main lodge here of Mashpi Lodge, and then these are all the different trail networks going out there, the Jungle Swing Trail, the Luminous Trail, the Palm Trails, and kind of all of the attractions in the reserve, just to show you a little bit of the trail map that we have. And you see a lot of these rivers that are flowing through this. This is extremely mountainous terrain topography. So these are, you know, a lot of steps that are involved in these walks. So obviously you're getting out here to go out with these naturalist guides and learn about the Choco Biosphere. Incredible variety of flora and fauna here. And it's really brought to life by these guides. And talk about birding itself. I mean, they have, Ecuador as a country has the fourth largest number of birds or bird species in its country. And there, out of those, there's like 1 in 4 of all birds in Ecuador you'll see on the Mashpi, or have been seen on the Mashpi Reserve, just within their 3,300 acres. So in terms of birding, this is about as good as it gets. You have, what's the other area in Ecuador that's famous for birding? It's called the Mindo Cloudforest, and the Mindo is basically adjacent to the Mashpi Reserve. So if you hear about birding trips that are going into the famous Mindo area of Ecuador, you're passing through Mindo on your way to Mashpi itself. So incredible birding. Incredible variety of wildlife, from, you know, primates lower down in the lower portions of it. You have these Andean weasels as well that you'll see around. And then more than just the wildlife is just the plant diversity here is phenomenal. You know, walking palms, so orchids, the bromeliads, you know, and learning about the interdependence of everything that is there. Someone asked, is it possible to see sloths in Mashpi? I don't think so. I think I've never seen sloths there. Actually, I think I have. I don't know. I'll follow up with you on that. I'm trying to think if sloths come up this high. I mean, the thing is, you're looking at so many things when you're at Mashpi. When you're going along, it's like every 5 feet, they're stopping and talking about certain plants and the interdependence of them as well. One thing for me personally, as I said, I'm not as much of a naturalist person as I am in culture and history. So I can sometimes get a little bit like, all right, it's too much information about plants. But the thing I love about these excursions at Mashpi is, unlike, I mean, I've spent so much time in the Amazon basin that Lodge is doing the same thing. And the Amazon is quite monotonous after a while because it's flat. You don't have any mountains, it's flat. The only time you would see the open skies when you get down to rivers. But here you're like in the mountains. So it's actually the views out as you're walking through are just incredible. And almost all of the hikes here at Mashpi are eventually ending at these beautiful tropical waterfalls. I mean, there's dozens of these tropical waterfalls literally all throughout the reserve. And so what I like about it is that as I'm going there, maybe I'm getting burnt out on naturalist talk, you're eventually finishing at these walks, these beautiful tropical waterfalls where you can then take a swim. So, you know, it's like going on a walk, learning about nature, having a beautiful views out, but then finishing at these tropical waterfalls. You can jump in and swim and cool off before you come back to the lodge. So that's what I like about it. It's like, even if you aren't interested in nature and wildlife, you're going on these great adventures and then finishing swimming in these tropical pools. And then all around the reserve, they have so many things to do. So they have this wonderful canopy tower, of course, that you climb up. Look at how high it is. I'm scared of heights, and this thing always freaks me out. But you get to the top of this and you have these incredible 360-degree views all around. You can actually see the hotel building down here along that ridge from that view up there. And then some of the most famous things are the famous sky bike. So they actually stretch this cable. I don't know, it's maybe a kilometer across this gorge, or 800 meters or so. And this contraption, you go 2 by 2. So they'll actually have people on either side of it. So it gets passed back and forth. You actually sit in this basket. And as you pedal it, the gears crank and actually traverse you along this cable. So this isn't just a free for all. You actually get on this thing and you pedal it along so you can stop. And you're actually, why you're doing this is you're going through the canopy level where the majority of wildlife exists in these tropical forests. So this is just a cool thing to do the sky bike. I mean, people love getting pictures of themselves in this. And it's very serene. I mean, you're just kind of floating across the forest. So here's a shot of it at its height going across in the sky bike. But then to be overshadowed, you have the average hiking distance in Mashpi. I'm going to get to that. I'm going to show you on another slide what's cool about this. So you also have the, can you stop on the sky bike and photograph? Of course. I mean, you take a GoPro on there, take a camera, take pictures of you. You know, GoPro with a stick is a great idea to get good shots. So it's great for photographs. This is another thing that they have, which is called the Dragonfly. And this is phenomenal. So this is taking the sky bike to a next level. And this is basically a basket that will fit 4 guests with a naturalist guide. And it has a 1.3 mile length, so a 2 kilometer length going across the entire valley. And so this is run by a generator that's up on the other side of this, and you're actually traversing across the forest. The best thing the feeling of this I get when I'm in it, because once you get away from the generator and the machinery that's moving this, you don't hear anything, so you're floating. To me, it's almost like if you could fly a hot air balloon over the nape of the earth. That's what it feels like going in this basket. It's just incredible. I'll show you a few more shots of it. So this is descending down from the first tower on this thing. And that's when looking down, you can see the creek below. I mean, at certain times, you're 700-800 feet up in the sky on this. I was lucky to be one of the very first people to actually ride this right when it was built. And that's a whole nother story for another time. But let's just say we were testing it. So incredible thing. Look at this shot just to show you. So you can see one basket coming back, and here's the other basket. So this basically goes all the way across this valley if you follow the cables and you see up to the other side. So it's about 2 kilometers in one length to be there. Here's actually a schematic showing it. So this is where you begin, and then you drop down, down here, canopy station, and it goes up and then returns back to it. So doing this, here they say average travel time from the departure station to arrival. So if you were to go and then come back, it would take you 40 minutes, and then to this main central point, which we mostly use, it takes about 20 minutes riding. So this is a highlight for people coming to do this. This is something generally they do charge additional for. It's like $25 or something per person. It's not a nickel and dime thing. It's because of the way that the project had to be set up financially to be a separate company than from Mashpi Lodge is the way it's set up. There was a long thing about permitting and stuff, but I'll send you more details of it afterwards. But you know, incredible thing to experience. Julie was asking about the length of the hikes. And so that brings me to this. So if we look at this map, this is the lodge. This is where that dragonfly begins. So this kind of tan line goes through, and you see T1, T2, T3, T4, T5. These are the towers that the dragonfly passes. So what you can't really tell unless you're great at reading topographic maps, but all these different trails, these are generally descending from the road and from the lodge down into these gorges to get down to these waterfalls. So most of these walks, I mean, I would say the longest one, I don't know, getting down to here, you might go 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers walking. But again, it's mostly downhill. They provide the rubber boots or welly boots for guests as well. And so you're mostly descending to get down to these waterfalls and areas, okay? But with this dragonfly, as you see here at Tower 5 and Tower 4, guests can get on and off the dragonfly to access these trails. So think about it this way. The way they'll do it is there's certain people that prefer walking uphill compared to downhill. I prefer walking uphill to downhill just because of my knees. So what they'll do is, in the case of people don't want to have to walk back uphill, you begin these hikes, you begin descending down, maybe you're coming all the way down this thing, you're going in to see the healing waterfall, and then you're going to walk out down to Tower 5. So you've done all this walk downhill. You get to the Tower 5, you go up in the tower, and then when the basket comes, they stop. You get in the basket and you ride the dragonfly back up to basically where the lodge is, which is like a 5-minute walk away. Or the alternative is you can take the dragonfly, you ride that to Tower 2, Tower 4, Tower 5, you get off, and then you can experience these waterfalls and then hike back up to the lodge. So, you know, I would say soft adventure. There's not, I mean, you could go do really long walks here, but most of the excursions you're stopping along the way, so it's not like super physically active there. But it's just an incredible system to have that dragonfly to be able to get on and off that. So it's a cool thing in itself, but it's also used for the walks there. Another area, so they talked about the different elevations in the Mashpi Reserve. This is what's called the Life Center. This is kind of the lowest elevation of the reserve. So down here you see a lot of like toucan, aracari. This is the one area of the reserve where you would most likely to see primates like squirrel monkeys, howler monkeys, maybe some capuchin monkeys here. This is a short walk down. They often do nocturnal hikes down to this area, and then we'll generally do snacks or lunches there. And they actually have a mariposario, which is like a butterfly center where they're growing cocoons and stuff. So it's actually all part of the experience here is visiting and learning about all of the butterflies of the area. So that's a great half-day experience as well, down to the Life Center. Great place to get, they have all the spotting scopes up there that you can put your phone on and get close-up pictures of some of the bird life and the weasels and stuff that you see in maybe primate species. They have a whole area. I mean, the variety of hummingbirds is absolutely phenomenal here. They have an area which is the hummingbird garden, and that they generally drive people up to, and then they can walk back down from it. But there they have, I mean, 150 feeders, and there's one guy, his full-time job is just keeping these things full in the morning, the feeders. I mean, you are hundreds of hummingbirds are boom, 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 zipping by your head, and you can just stand right there with your camera and get these, you know, slow motion shots. It is incredible. So that's another highlight for people is going to see this, you know, the butterfly garden itself. And then they do a great job when you're out on excursions. They have this little magic moment program where they have certain areas around the reserve where maybe people are out in the middle of nowhere and they walk up to this waterfall in the middle, and there's this beautiful table set up with wine, you know, d'oeuvres and, you know, strawberries dipped in chocolate. And it always blows people away. So the staff really love doing this, pulling off these magic moments for guests to just surprise them in the middle of excursion with a great picnic or snack in the middle of it. And then they do other things. So when you're coming back in the evening, like this is that lounge area where I said we talk about excursions before going out on them, but the naturalist guides give incredible talks in the evening. And the thing about Mashpi itself is that they do have resident biologists, wildlife biologists, botanists, ornithologists that are there that are actually doing active research. So a lot of them are talking about the research that they're doing at the moment. They're showing guests the trap camera footage that they've collected over the last month of finding pumas and jaguars and stuff like that in areas of it. So really in depth, like people that love this type of science and nature. It's like living in a National Geographic documentary and being able to listen to these guides who do this day in and day out to their evening talks is a great way to spend the evening. And then they do night walks as well. So, I mean, it's really amazing how much just life, like biomass, you're experiencing during the day. And then when you go out on these walks at nighttime, how much more you actually see when you're just focused to the beam of your headlamp. I mean, this is where you'll go out and see like glass frogs and like crazy praying mantis and stuff like that. So these are really fun going out and doing these nocturnal walks. And especially the sounds of the Cloudforest at night are incredible. As I talked about the research that's happening there, they do have a laboratory there where the researchers are doing their work. They're compiling information, they're reviewing trap camera stuff, they're compiling statistics and data. This is also open to guests to go in there, and they have a great kids laboratory as well. So this is great for children. You know, kids can go in here and like learn what it takes to be a researcher. Really interesting. My son, Carter, the older one, he's 10 now, but we were here and I think he was maybe 6 at that time. And he got enticed by the warm chocolate chip cookies at 6:30 in the morning. You know, initially, and near the end of it, he was really into identifying birds. And I've like never really cared about birds personally, and my wife either. So I'm kind of like, he definitely didn't get it from me. But with these guides, he gets so fired up, and he learned to identify the beaks and the plumage and the breast and how to identify birds in the guidebook. We got home. I bought him like an Audubon guide and a pair of binoculars, which sit in our living room, and he still bird watches today. So my son was exposed to bird watching there, and it's a hobby and it's a passion that he's carried on from his time at Mashpi. So I'm really, eternally grateful for that experience for him there. So great place for kids. I mean, fascinating. I would say probably 6 and up is ideal. They'll take younger kids, but I think kind of 6 and up is where they really get into this type of stuff. So last thing, just a little bit of, temperatures. People want to know about seasonality. Again, you're right on the equator, so there's not huge variances year round in terms of temperatures and stuff. You can see the mean temperature there in Fahrenheit between 64 to 75 year round. The water temperatures in the river maintain constant, just sub 70 degrees. The altitude of the reserve goes between 3,000 to 5,000 feet. Yes, it's very wet there. June to September are the driest, but I mean, you're looking at 236 inches of rain annually. And it rains a lot here. You go to a rainforest, it rains. Here, it's rain, but it's also all this mist from the clouds as well in the Cloudforest. But it's lovely to go out to. I always notice guests when they come here, they go out and the guides are kind of like, hey, do you want a poncho? And everyone grabs ponchos and they have them. And then after you've been out for 5 minutes, it starts raining lightly. And all the guests are going to throw on their ponchos and they're looking at the guides who are just getting wet because it's lovely temperature. They're not getting cold. It's just you're going to get wet when you go out. And then as days goes on, people realize I don't need a poncho. Let's get wet. And then when you come back to the lodge, they have these big industrial dryers, and you can hand over your wet clothes to the naturalist guides. They throw them in the dryer and they deliver them to your room within a couple hours when they're dry. So it rains here. You're gonna get wet. That's what you came to do. But it's constantly changing between rain and sun. So recommend a length stay. You're not gonna go out here for less than 2 nights because of the drive, out. But most people are staying there 3 or 4 nights. Best way to kind of weave this into an itinerary, for me personally, I think that going here prior to the Galapagos is key. I just think that, the Galapagos is a lot of wildlife and nature, so adding this onto it makes it even more wildlife and nature. I think going here first kind of eases people into it. It says, wow, luxury property, incredible learning, but you're not up close and personal as you are with the animals in the Galapagos. I think maybe some people have been in the Galapagos, then they come here and they're looking at small animals. They're not swimming with sea lions. That maybe could be, I don't know, a disappointment, but it's just not the same. So I think starting a trip here is great. So in that, you would fly into Quito. You would spend a night in Quito at Casa Gangotena or elsewhere, depending on budget. Then you would come out and spend however many nights, 2, 3, 4 nights in Mashpi, and then you drive back, spend a night in Quito, and then the next day you would fly out to the Galapagos. I think that's the best way to do it. However, if you're doing a mainland trip, you can't connect these other things. And I'm going to mention Hacienda Zuleta here because you guys know I love Zuleta. You can do a direct drive from Mashpi to Zuleta. It takes about 6 hours. That, of course, has to be arranged in privately for that transfer. But so say you could come into Quito, go out to Mashpi for a couple of nights, and then drive straight to Zuleta. It's a 6-hour drive. It's curvy and long. I did it with kids as young as 3 and 6. And we had a great time. And we stopped at rose plantations along the way. We stopped at the equator, to do all the experiments and stuff. So that's a way to do it. So my kind of I think the ideal trip in Ecuador and the Galapagos is, and I'm going to name drop, of course, properties of work, but with flying to Quito, spend a night or 2 in Quito, in Casa Gangotena to soak up historical Quito, go out to Mashpi Lodge, 2 to 4 nights, come back to Quito for a night, go out to the Galapagos, go on a cruise if you're doing a cruise. If not, go stay at some place like Galapagos Safari Camp, like 4 or 5 nights, And then after the Galapagos, fly back to Quito and then go up to Zuleta for 2 to 3 nights. To me, that is just an incredible trip. You're seeing historical downtown, Quito. You're seeing this incredible Cloudforest and the Choco Biosphere at Mashpi. You're going out the Galapagos and the Galapagos experience. And then you're having this colonial, indigenous farm experience out at Zuleta. It's just a great trip overall. So that's it, guys. Feel free. Let me just see if there's any other questions on my little question pane. I think I've answered most that has come. If you have any other questions, drop them in here. If not, I'm going to send you the recording of this afterwards and all the marketing documents and images and stuff afterwards. So again, if you have any other questions, and know that tomorrow, the next webinar I'm doing Colombia, Hacienda Bambusa, and a private villa in Barichara called Casa Yari. I think the manager is going to join me, Olivier. So if you want to sign up for that, that is going to be happening tomorrow, or you can just drop me an email if you want to sign up for those as well. That is it. So again, I'll leave it on for a couple of minutes if anybody has any questions. If you don't have any questions, that means that I either bored you to death and you're doing something else, or I just answered everything and you have nothing else to ask because I talked about it all. Deb was just talking about how incredible her time was. Such fabulous properties. Sunrise birding, the guided hikes, the butterfly farm, amazing. We've got just fans here. Nina, stayed with my family in 2018. It's incredible. Highly recommended. Activities are amazing. All right. Cool. Yeah, Whitney was saying recommended Netflix documentary on Mashpi too. So they did, the Netflix, it was really BBC did, I guess it's like amazing hotels or hotel lobbies of the world, where they interviewed Roque and they do a real behind the scenes thing about Mashpi. So that's great. If you need something else for your Netflix queue, look it up. So yeah, send the itinerary you mentioned, have clients to Galapagos. Yeah, I'll do that. And Life Beyond the Lobby, I think it's called, is the series, Life Beyond the Lobby. Whitney, we have great pictures of you. I was actually thinking this morning, I should have dug up my archives of pictures of you at Mashpi with your red jacket and the waterfalls. That was a fun trip. Joe, thanks, brother. Appreciate it. Hope you're staying cool. It's been like 85 up here in Marin every day. Oh, Kim, how about the mosquitoes? And not is really, compared to the Amazon, they're nothing here. You're generally kind of covered up anyways with long sleeves is the way we suggest people go out, but they provide like a natural insect repellent for you. It's not bad. Go out at nighttime when you have a headlamp on your head, it's a different instance, but there's not a lot. What about snakes? Oh yeah, there's great snakes there. Saying that, I think I've seen one and I've been there dozens of times, but these guides are going to spot anything before you do, but most of the time, if you do see snakes, they're like baby snakes that you can pick up and hold. Fascinating creatures. Remind me again the list of hotels in Quito where people can get picked up other than Gangotena. I know they pick up at the JW Marriott, they pick up at the Swiss Hotel, they pick up at the Hilton. I think those are the main 3 in the new town. And then the last stop they do is at Gangotena in the old town. Most of any other hotels in the old town within walking distance of Gangotena, so people have to kind of make their way there. So I think there's like 3 in the new town, and then the last one is Gangotena in the old town before it takes off. Okay, y'all, I am out of here. Thanks for attending, and I'll see you tomorrow if you're joining me.